and again, today we will talk about methods and it's really important to have what there. Paper is labeled such as introduction and method. This helps you to clearly separate the sections, and it will just make things really clear to the reader. You may have subheadings you want, but they are not required. If you choose to do subheadings, you may do something like your heading being methods, and then your first subheading being the title of your first reputable source. The second subheading would be the title of your second paper, and the third subheading would be the title of your third paper. Your reference list is very important to format correctly. It's only worth a few points, but you're going to see this every single week, so you want to make sure that you're getting it right so you don't continuously lose points. You can look in your APA manual starting on page 106. That's page 110 specifically for journal articles. And you can also go to Purdue OWL to see their resources on APA formatting. In general, what you're going to do is you're going to have last name, first initial, year of the publication, title of the publication, journal title, issue, volume if it's available, and the page numbers that you're using. So for example, you can take a look down here at the bottom where we have a fake article by J.A. Smith as an example. Make sure your reference list is always put in alphabetical order, and make sure that you are always using initials for first names. You never want to spell out the first name. Don't forget to include all the necessary information, and make sure to double space between references to keep it clean. In Milestone 2, there are a couple things that you're going to be graded on in the rubric. You're going to write an introduction, you're going to include a method section, you're going to have definitions of terms, and you're going to have research limitations. So first we're going to look at the introduction. We talked about this in the announcement this week, but let's go over it again. So you want to start very broad and then narrow down to get more specific. And a good way to do this is a 3-paragraph format. Your first paragraph is going to be a very broad paragraph where you're including your thesis, a statement, what your paper is about. Kind of think big picture in this section. Your second paragraph, you're going to start getting more specific and you're going to start using examples. And you're going to build up why your topic is important here. You're also going to use a number of sources in this paragraph to support your points. And then you're going to narrow even further about your actual experiments. You're going to include your purpose statement and goals for this paper. You're also going to include your hypothesis and null in this section. So for example, let's look at your question and say, does climate change cause impact to coral reefs, for an example? Your first paragraph is going to be that broad first paragraph. What is the bigger problem? You're going to talk about maybe how the planet is changing and how ecosystems are linked together. And then you're going to talk about a little bit about climate change and coral reefs. Now in that second paragraph, you're going to narrow it down. Why is this important? What does it matter if climate change impacts our coral reefs? How does that affect humans? How does that affect other ecosystems? Remember to use your sources here. And then you're going to narrow down even further to a very specific third paragraph. You're going to talk about the goals of your paper. You might state or start off your paragraph saying something like, in this paper, we intend to demonstrate that climate change does impact coral reefs and explore how this affects humans in our society. Make sure that you are very, very clear with your hypothesis and null and that they're easily identified in this area. You can even state, I hypothesize that, or the null hypothesis is. Just make sure that they're very clear. In the methods section, you are actually going to summarize the methods of your 3 reputable sources that you found this last week. Remember to summarize, do not copy the method section of these sources. You can use direct quotes if you'd like for part of it. Make sure you're using quotation marks and properly citing your sources. This is why you needed to have journal articles as your reputable source, because you need to have methods sections to actually summarize. So the intent of the methods is to show how research is done and provide specific details to the reader. You can separate by paragraph or by subheading for each of your articles, kind of like we talked about earlier. Your methods need to be very detailed and very specific. A reader should understand how the experiment was done and how they would repeat it. You do not results or what was found out in the study, and you do not just stick to how the experiments were done. So I have an example here of a paragraph from the road. So I'm going to read it out real quick, and then we can talk a bit about its purpose. Pygmy rabbits were maintained on grain-foraged pellets ranging from 15.8 to 21.3% crude protein and 35.6 to 49.3 neutral determined fiber, produced at Washington State University feed mill, Pullman, Washington. We weighed and monitored pellet consumption and provided fresh tap or bottled water daily. Rabbits were also offered a variety of fresh greens, approximately 5 grams during non-breeding season, 40 grams during breeding season, and clippings from big sagebrush, Artemisia tridentata, approximately 15 grams during non-breeding season, 25 grams during breeding season. We weighed animals once or twice weekly, except when they were pregnant or lactating. So from this paragraph in the methods section, the reader would be able to understand what we are feeding these animals. They would know what type of food we got and the important factors, which are protein and NDF, and they would know where we got that food from. They would know that we monitored their food consumption daily and we're providing them water and other fresh greens and approximately how much. So make sure you note through here that I'm using specific numbers and I'm basically instructing the person how to take care of a pygmy rabbit if they were going to do that. Another thing that you will be graded upon in the rubric is definition of terms. These are just words that the average reader may not know that are included in your paper. Some examples would be ecosystems, acidic, habituated. On the coral reef example, you could define coral reef or climate change. The rubric does not require a specific amount of terms to be defined, but for my grading purposes, include at least 3 terms in your paper. You must make your definitions clear for grading. I suggest making a separate section labeled key terms, and that way you can just list your terms and their definitions, and it's very easy to find. You can define your terms within the text. This is usually done within the introduction. I do ask that you highlight those terms so that they're easy to pick out and find, and that you get credit for defining every term that you include. The last thing in the rubric that you will be graded on is research limitations. Remember, these are things that occurred in your studies that may impact whether the results were accurate. Include at least 1 research limitation. If you absolutely cannot find any in your papers, state that no research limitations were present in these studies, but you do have to mention research limitations in order to get credit for that section. Usually the research limitations will be found in the methods section, so work it into your paragraphs on the methods of each of your papers that you are summarizing. Some examples of research limitations include small sample sizes, adverse weather, or only being able to use one gender or age group in the study. One note, don't just say small sample size was a research limitation. Explain why the small sample size may have impacted the research findings. So to summarize, we talked about the reference list, and again, that's something that's going to be found in all of your milestones and of course your final paper. And we talked about the milestone 2 pieces, which are the introduction, methods, definition of terms, and research limitations. Next week, I will put up a video for milestone 3, which includes the results section and figures.